Hi, Rick.
Hello.
Jerry.
Hey, Jerry. Hi, Paula. Good day.
Hi.
Maureen, welcome.
Be right back grabbing my tea.
Everybody.
Kevin. Hi, Jerry. Hi, Mallory.
Mallory.
Is Carrie joining?
I
No.
presume so. I haven't heard otherwise. We'll give her one more minute and we'll get started.
There she is.
Yep. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Carrie.
All right.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late. So confused.
That's okay. So we'll call the meeting to order and welcome everybody. Welcome public. So tonight, in terms of our agenda, we move public comment up to the beginning as an experiment to see how that works. And after we review the minutes, we're going to flip. We'll have a day give us an update on the community health needs assessment, and then we're going to flip the tobacco and plastics discussions, mainly because the discussion around the implementation of the new plastic regulations is probably shorter than the tobacco regulations, which will take the bulk of the meeting. We'll get an update from Carrie, monthly updates from Aday and Mallory, and we'll be all set. So without further ado, does anyone in the public, I see a couple names, wish to make a comment before we move on? If so, just either raise your hand electronically or visually. And seeing no hands, we will move on. We have two sets of minutes, one for our regular January 12th meeting, and then one for the January 24th meeting, special meeting we had around the needs assessment. Did they look okay to everyone? I know, Carrie, you weren't at the 12th meeting.
Right.
Oh, they look good,
They look good.
as always.
As always.
And so make a motion to approve both.
Second.
Second, Paula. Roll call, Carrie
Yes.
and Paula
Yes.
and Rick, yes. So those minutes are approved. And Aday, want to sort of update us on where we are with the community needs assessment?
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lopez. Before I proceed, I can see two new faces on the screen. Is it possible for them to just give us a brief introduction of who they are and why they are in the meeting? I see Nujahan, and I see Janari. Go ahead,
So
Janari.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So my name is Nurjahan Mandal. I live in Reading and I'm a student at UMass Boston, a nursing program. So I'm taking their community and public health class, and I'm tasked with learning about my community, participating at the board of health meeting, and also possibly finding out the at least one unmet need, and work with you all on it and implement, come up with a plan, implement, and assess my community and all that. So that's why I'm here today.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining
Welcome.
us.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And
Hi,
Jen,
folks. My name is Gennady Pilavsky. I go by Genna. I am with the Reading Climate Advisory Committee, and I'm here to be an emotional support person for David Zeke.
okay, good, great.
Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
So,
All right. So in terms of the community health needs assessment, we reached out to Peer Associates LLC. They received the official notice and fully executed contract. So we're all set. They are thrilled to have the opportunity to work with the town of Reading. In the coming weeks, we will coordinate a kickoff meeting to identify the framework for the community health needs assessment project. I will be reaching out to our community partners and stakeholders in the coming weeks.
great. That's great. So we'll be on our way, and we're envisioning a full board meeting with all the other stakeholders, as the day says, and to have a planning meeting of how we might go forward on that. So look forward to that.
Next
Okay.
item.
Yeah.
Next item will be the plastic.
Yes.
All right. So as you all know, town meeting adopted the bylaw proposing to regulate polystyrene food service items. The bylaw will be official once the Attorney General's office approves it. It's pending approval at the moment, and the Attorney General's office has until the end of March to approve this bylaw. The approval of this bylaw will begin a 12-month implementation phase, and I anticipate that this bylaw will go into full effect sometime in April 2024. The chair of the Reading Climate Advisory Committee, David Zeke, is here tonight to initiate a conversation about how we should manage and organize the implementation phase. So, David, thanks for joining us.
So we are now waiting for the Attorney General's approval of our bylaw. Once that's approved, Laura Jim will she has to advertise it for a couple of weeks in the newspapers, and then it gets posted. And once it gets posted, this 12-month implementation, or pause, I guess, really, before full implementation starts. And so we've got just a little over a year to implement the bylaw. Well, what we wanted to do, again, and the Climate Advisory Committee, was talk to you about how you would like to see that proceed. We have some thoughts about what we would do, like things like websites and brochures and meeting with businesses, but we want to get your take on this. So this will be enforced through the health department. And I think in the brief conversation we had about this before, it was suggested that it would be added to the normal inspection routine or something like that. I think that's largely up to you. But I'm interested in what you would like to do between now and a year from now, so that all of the affected businesses are ready, that they've found other products to replace the polystyrene. They're fully aware that it's happening and everything's ready to go, so there won't be a delay once it goes into full effect, and we won't have any enforcement issues or have to, call anybody down for it. So I guess I'm interested if you have thought about this, and by the way, we could proceed on a number of paths. We can work this with a day. We could work with maybe a subcommittee. We could form a sort of a joint subcommittee to work through this, or any way you want to do it. We just wanted to be sure that you were, it's really more of your process really at this point than ours probably, but we've been working on it a long while.
It would seem that, given that it's a new regulation, and we have a year to let people know what it all means, it seems like education is the biggest component of what we could do between now and a year from now, so that no one's surprised. And so, I think you working with a day would probably be the most efficient way to do that. A couple thoughts I would have, and I'd be interested in if board members have other ideas. One could be that the climate committee, maybe in conjunction with the health department, could have a couple, invite the 130 food establishments that we have, to invite them to a couple education sessions during the course of the year where they could see a presentation, ask questions, and so forth. The other thought would be whether, as we do inspections in the course of 2023, if there was a handout, a sheet that had told the establishment that all about the new regulations and what was expected and so forth, that the inspector could just simply hand to the establishment at the time of the routine inspection to give them a heads up. Seems like those would be the two ways to go about it. Kevin, do you have some thoughts on this?
I just want to back up your second idea, Rick. It's kind of exactly what I was thinking. I think, David, if you could put together something, as you know, simple, because simple gets read, that our inspectors can go around with at the course of the normal routine inspections, that they can hand them and explain a little bit to them. This is going to be going in place. This is the time frame. This is what you have to use. That, I think, would be most helpful. The second thing I worry about logistically, we're doing a lot of staff. The first thing you said, I should say, I worry about the logistics of utilizing a lot of staff time to not get a lot of turnout. So I think, keeping things simple to me is always better. So that's why I like that second idea of yours, Rick.
We did have 3 of these public forums to talk about this before the bylaw was passed, and we netted 3 attendees for those. So we didn't.
That's what I fear.
It was more of a check the box for us than a use to anybody else in Reading.
Sure.
However, I think we should do that just again to check the box. I would also say that from our perspective, maybe more than the health departments, we would also like to have a communication to the Reading, residents in general, because part of the thinking here is that customers of restaurant customers or whatever, or any customers of these businesses that have the utensils should be asking why they would want polystyrene, but further, why do they want utensils at all? I've cited before an example of one woman who approached me on the street. Actually, I think it was the fall fair. Said that she had a kitchen drawer full of plastic forks and knives, in their original packages, because they were given out as part of a delivery or a takeout or something like that. And when she got it home, they used their regular utensils. So I think we need to get Reading residents to think about whether they even want these kind of single-use disposable plastic utensils. And if they do, fine. But if they don't encourage the businesses to even supply them. And that's a different audience, of course, from the people that you're managing, but I think they need to have that attitude too. We could do that with or without the participation of I think we would want your participation, but it could be something that we primarily do through the Climate Advisory Committee. Do you agree with that message?
Yes, absolutely. Makes total sense.
The only concern I would have over something like that, Dave, would be the content. And as soon as you attach the health department to it, if it is a content that is an arguable point, I'd want to keep away from that. I'd want it to be very, matter of factly, right? So if the health department is going to have their name tacked onto it, it can't be something that is an arguable point. It's just, here's what it is. You decide what you want to do for yourself. I think that's great, fine. But that would be my only concern in regard to that, just exactly what is being communicated.
Okay, I hear that.
And in the meantime, we are currently working on our inspection software to accommodate the changes needed to implement this new bylaw. We are also working on training our staff to effectively identify polystyrene products. We also plan to verbally inform restaurant managers while we conduct our routine inspections about the new bylaws. And we think that sometime in September, we should send out a letter of correspondence to all food establishment owners, notifying them of the new bylaw. Something like that, something to that effect.
Do we have an email list of all the food establishment?
Yes,
So
we do.
you can send that out, Melissa.
Yes.
Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, so it sounds like, David, it would be best to work directly with Aday. And it sounds like a handout at the time of inspections, an email broadcast around Labor Day. And I guess the classes would not work if you only had 3 people coming during the hearing. So that probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Sorry, Rick, if I
Go ahead.
may. I'd be interested in kind of exploring what the outreach strategy is and if there's a way to link up if the food establishments have a regular meeting, or if there's some other convening point that would make it easier, just so that you provide an opportunity for folks to engage. I mean, I suppose the other option would be that the folks who are engaged in implementation, you could set up like an office hour point and say, we're available to provide information. Somebody could make themselves available for an hour a week, or something like that. That would be an alternative approach. And I'm not speaking for how Aday is going to deploy staff. I don't have any purview over his how he chooses to use staff time, but if there were any linkage with staff, that's up to him. But I mean, I think I don't want us to throw away outreach just because we didn't have, because y'all didn't have good turnout. It's important that we work hard to communicate with the folks that we are regulating and supporting in their work. So, and I'd love to have further conversation about kind of what education material might include. Yeah.
Well, it could be also in that emailing. I mean, if there's a natural convening point, that would be ideal for food establishments. Otherwise, we could, if we send out an email mid-year, we could ask people, would they attend if we had a session to educate them on that? And please respond to the email. And if you get 20 people who are interested, then go for it. If it's silence, then it may not matter. The other thought that just occurred to me is whether Aday, our inspectors or inspector needs any training around this, because this is not typical of the typical training inspectors get. Do they Is there some kind of education that's
We are
Jennifer would be-
currently, yeah, we're currently working on that, so they can identify polystyrene products.
okay, great.
So how about the school? Do you also work with the schools, and what about the churches? Are they on your list?
Are you asking if we inspect the schools and churches?
Yes.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. All right. So that would,
Every
they
food
would also
establishment.
be. They would
Yes,
also
every
be-
food establishment that has a permit in the
Mhm.
town of Reading falls under the Board of Health.
So those handouts will be important.
And when it gets really close to like April, we can have a social media post informing the residents about this as well.
Sure. It's a good idea.
Okay, so we'll work with a day going forward. And,
Yes,
that'd be fine.
and just keep us in the loop.
Mhm. All right, I guess that's it from my end.
Okay, great. Thank you, David, for coming.
Sounds
Alright.
good.
for
Thank you.
tuning in.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for everything. Have a good night.
You too.
Good night. Okay,
All right.
so next.
Tobacco regs.
Yes.
So you have two sets of tobacco regulations before you tonight. The first one is a document that updates current regulations to be current with the state laws. The second is a document that includes the updated regs and proposed local optional additions. If the board is willing and ready tonight, you can take a vote to adopt the first document, which updates current regulations to be current with the state laws, and then proceed with the review of additional proposed local changes. It's totally up to the board, whatever you want to do tonight. And Maureen, thanks for being here tonight.
I'm happy to be here and ready to assist in whatever way I can.
Jackie's
What?
still here.
So I read through the first document that incorporates in yellow all the new state regs from 2019. And, you know, I'm not sure how much of an option we have to tweak them or not, and they look fine to me. And I would hope at a minimum, we could at least adopt those, and then we'll have to walk through on the screen each of the options and make decisions around that. So let me ask the board members whether they had any questions, comments, suggestions around this first document while Maureen's here and could answer them, or any concerns.
I did not.
Okay,
I did not either.
okay, great.
Looks good to me.
Kevin, Jerry, Kevin. you're good.
I did not either, and I just loved it last time when Maureen said, you can adopt them or not, but that's how I'm doing it. Your point earlier, Rick, are we okay with it? We're already doing it.
Yeah, yeah, right.
That's right.
Right, so I'd like to make a motion to adopt the document that Cassidy has put up on the screen, which is the current Town of Reading regulations regarding tobacco products, including and highlighted in yellow the 2019 state amendments to make it consistent with the current law. So I would make a motion to approve that. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second, Carrie. Roll call, Paula,
Yes,
Carrie,
yes.
Rick, yes. So we've adopted those regulations, and then there's the second document. And Naday, you want to, or Maureen, you want to talk to us about that document?
Sure, Dave, if you want, I'll start. And I'd like to back up a little bit and make a couple of remarks that I wish I had made at the beginning of the last meeting. And that is that this can all look very confusing, and I can understand why it can, because we have so many versions and a word stuck in here, new word or whatever. And so I'd like to kind of just explain, although you probably already know this, but why this process is so, kind of convoluted. So in Massachusetts and other states, when a state law gets passed, then someone has to take that law and put it into some sort of regulation. So you have a law that says, no one can drive over 75. Okay, but what does that mean? That means that somebody's going to have to enforce that. And what are they enforcing? And, what is the fine that goes with that and so on. So we have a state law that gets passed, filed and then passed. And then a board or agency or whatever. And in the case of tobacco, it was DPH. So DPH legal staff looked at the law, we call it a law that was passed. And then they write up the regulations that support the law. So then we out in the field, we get a copy of that, and then we go and start enforcing it. And when we start to enforce it, sometimes we realize that something doesn't quite match up, or it's not understandable, or it needs to be tweaked. So then we go to our TAs, our technical advisors, like Cheryl Sabara, who's in a meeting right now, but she will hop on the minute she gets out of her other board meeting. But so someone like Cheryl will that team will look at the regulations that DPH wrote and listen to the input from field people like me, and then they'll tweak it a little bit, keeping it legal and within the law, but then we end up with a word inserted here, or a little definition change or whatever. So in that process, I understand it can be confusing because we're moving from all these different, iterations. And in some of my communities, I did an early version of this. As we rolled out that early version, we realized we should have tweaked it a little more. And so, for instance, when you adopt this, your adopted version, even if you use the language we give you tonight, may look slightly different than Wakefield or Melrose or some of the early towns. So be glad you were a little bit later, because this is tighter, the definitions are tighter. And then one more, I don't want to call it a wrinkle, but one more situation is that you have, as you know, a set of local regs. So we're imposing the state law on, onto your local regs. So that's why all these colors and iterations and so on. Hopefully this new version helps, because the yellow was just bringing your regs up to state law. Then the green that you see tonight is any local reg decision that you might want to make. You don't have to adopt anything, or you can adopt everything in green. You can look at it and talk about it. And then the blue was just to indicate that those are decisions you already made. So you don't really have to look at those, but it tried to make it clear which was which in each of these paragraphs. So I hope that helps a little bit on why there are different iterations, and we have to kind of work our way through this.
Thank you, Maureen.
You're welcome. So do you want to start where we left off last time, which I think was cigar sales regulations?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
So I forget now if we actually started discussing this, and the potential for the regulation remains the same, that you have a local reg that says, it's not a state law, it's a local reg that says there's a cigar minimum price in Reading. And that minimum price is $2.50 for any single and $5 for any multi-pack, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. If it's more than one, it's $5. The intention was so that young people wouldn't be able to buy these products so easily, not as much disposable income. Then that was 6, 7, 8 years ago, whatever it was. So some communities have increased those minimum prices just to keep up with inflation. And the price that was adopted by Boston after doing some study of various indexes was $5 80 cents for a multi-pack and $2.90 for a single. And again, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do anything. Some of my communities have not increased the minimum price. Some have increased it, as I mentioned this example here. And one community did $3 for singles and $6 for multi-packs,
Mhm.
just to have round numbers. So you can you can decide as you go, or you can discuss as you go, or you can take the whole document, however you want to do this.
I think we should probably discuss as we go, so we can.
Yeah,
go through
yeah.
the-
Mhm.
I think, 3 and 6 sort of makes sense to me. These fractions don't, but I don't know if anybody feels strongly otherwise.
No.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the goal of this is to make it less affordable for kids to buy
Right.
cigarette.
A cigar. So back when we started promoting this strategy to reduce youth access, kids were buying. We would see in parks, playgrounds, pink and purple foiled wrap, or the wrappings that came on cigarillos, and kids were buying those, and they were 69, 79 cents each. So we were trying to come up with a strategy, and pricing is often a very good strategy to reduce access and reduce use. And so that was the strategy that was employed back then, was to put a minimum price on those single cigars and those multi-packs so that they would be less attractive to kids.
This one's just a little confusing for me in general, in the aspect of we're trying to regulate a price point for kids that aren't allowed to buy them, right? So that it gets a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, I agree.
It gets
Yeah.
just a little silly, is I guess the word, not confusing. I'll say in that regard. I get it. I don't
Yeah.
doubt the data that you have, Maureen. It just as a point to say it that way. And I think I can speak for a day, but I think a day asked the question for the same reason I was thinking. Shouldn't it be 5 and 10?
Right.
If the goal is to make it unaffordable, 5 and 10 would be unaffordable. I understand that, but that puts it against the person who's 21 and older now has to pay $5 for a minimum cigar, which I guess is not fair, because now we're regulating a price of somebody who shouldn't be buying it in the first place. So as I discuss this with myself and argue with myself here, I think it's kind of silly. So, I mean, if $2.90 and $5.80 or 3 and 6 is fine with me, but 0 would be fine with me as well. Because I think
Well,
we should,
I
do a
think
better job of regulating it.
the one thing that might make sense here is that you're right that under 21, you can't go into a store and buy this, but there could be a sort of black market. And if an adult can go in and buy them for 79 cents and they can go to the schoolyard and sell them for $1, then this puts a little bit of a barrier in terms of even the cost on the secondary market.
Yeah, like I said, I'm fine. 3 and 6 is good with me.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Let's move ahead. We'll stick with 3 and 6. It looks like in H, this is just some minor wording additions. Maureen?
Exactly. What I was talking about, tightening those definitions up. Yeah, obviously flavored tobacco is prohibited.
Right.
So this wasn't in your local reg, and you can decide that, yep, you want to add that language in, because it tightens up the definition to match what we're enforcing.
I am in favor of that. And I am a wordsmith, but.
Like wordsmith, looks to me.
I love wordsmiths.
Okay,
I would agree.
So we can go with the changes in H and I. Maureen, J.
Yeah, so all this it really means is you have it in your local reg, and it's saying, do you want it in this new set of regs? You have a chance to decide to take it out or leave it in. you have a, I believe you have a blunt wrap ban.
I thought we did too.
Yeah,
uh,
so is,
um,
If we have one on the books, why would J even be necessary?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I'm looking for it now in the earlier doc. HI. Well, that's interesting. I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Well, I guess that's why Cheryl wrote it that way, because she didn't spot it in the version that we were working with. But I believe you had in some version, you had a blunt wrap ban, because I know I've enforced it in Reading.
right,
So what you can do, because we're kind of rewriting this document tonight, you can decide, this is one of the decision points, you can decide whether to keep the blunt wrap in or take the blunt wrap out.
I'm in favor of keeping it.
same.
Keeping the prohibition in,
Yes.
yes. All in
Belt
favor?
and suspenders.
Yeah,
So just, Maureen, you've regulated this in the past. We're not about to put something in place that a business owner tomorrow is gonna be taking off their shelves.
Correct, because I have 7 communities, and in my mind at least, all 7 have a blunt wrap ban, and I enforce blunt wrap ban in all 7 communities.
When in theory, if this is voted on tonight, does this go into effect tonight?
So,
Well,
so
the-
that's
let
that's
me
one
just
of the
say that-
decisions you would make.
Right, so I think the time frame for this is, as I understand it, is if we get through the entire document, which who knows, because we may have to continue this discussion next month, but hopefully we'll get through it. If we get through it, I think it needs to be reviewed by a town council and then come back to us for sort of a final review. So that potentially could be in the March meeting. And then what we've said is that we should have a hearing and invite community members as well as businesses who sell tobacco products. And we would probably do that in April timeframe, somewhere there. And then following the hearing in May, based on the input and based on our original draft that has been reviewed by town council, we can make any final tweaks and or take a vote then. And then I think the implementation, we could make a decision at that point when that would happen. Whether it would be for the new changes, we could give a time frame. Does
Okay.
that answer your question, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that does, Rick. Thank you. That's perfect. Because I just don't want to pull the rug out from underneath anybody who's got all this product on their shelves that now is, useless to them and they've just wasted their money on it.
Sure. That makes sense.
So 2 things, Kevin. One, I have inspected all Reading stores, and I certainly would have advised them if they had blunt wraps, but I'm pretty sure that a day when I wrote to you that I had done a complete inspection, I had found only minor issues like, a sign missing, which I gave them and they put up, that kind of thing. But Reading stores were very compliant with the regulations that I was enforcing, and I'm virtually certain I was enforcing blunt wrap ban, since that was my belief. Also, I did want to mention that you certainly can have a public hearing, but I have been sharing with other communities that if they're just updating the regs and not introducing a brand new provision, then you don't have to. You can always have a public hearing, but there's no requirement that you have a public hearing, because you're not really changing anything. We're enforcing state law now, so all of that is already being done without a public hearing. And then any other changes, like so far, I think the only other real change has been the change in the minimum cigar price. And there's already a minimum, just changing it by a little. So I'm not advocating either way. I just wanted to let you know that there is that option to not hold a public hearing because it's just updating and not changing.
Okay. If we move on, it doesn't look like there's anything in K, and in the L section, it's just wording. So maybe we can move toward M, which is self-service displays.
And that, I think that must be a wording thing, because today we already
Enforce this.
yeah, let me see. All self-service displays are defined here and are prohibited. Oh, okay. This would be new. Okay, this would be new. A self-service display would be, for instance, a humidor. So some of your stores have humidors. If it's a family-friendly store, they have to be locked. If it's an adult-only store and you don't have any adult-only stores, they don't have to be locked. So this is giving you the opportunity to decide that you want this prohibition, that you don't want any self-service displays. So like a liquor store couldn't have a humidor.
So is this something that can trigger a hearing? This particular one?
This would be new, and then you probably, it's a ban, and then I think based on your nothing, you don't really have to have a public hearing for any of this, but based on your history and and that you have set a precedent that when you change your tobacco regs, you've held a public hearing. So it's kind of expected, and you would probably want to do that.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Maureen, did you just say I know you said we don't have any adult-only tobacco stores. Do we not allow them? Or do we allow them?
There's no prohibition that I know of.
So the
you
only
just
thing the only thing in that regard I would add to this then is, except for adult-only tobacco stores, which we do have a regulation that says you have to be 21 or older to enter.
Right.
Just as an add-on.
So change, yeah, so change this
Not a
wording a
change,
little.
just an add-on.
Yeah, except for.
Right. If no one has an issue with that, that is.
I think that's a smart move on, because you never know if we're going to have an adult only.
Right. That's reasonable. Everybody's okay with M. We'll go to N around vending machines are prohibited, which seems to make sense because you can't control vending machines and who uses them.
And the last one you had was in I think it's an American Legion
Yes,
or VFW on
I was
Ash
just going
Street.
to ask about that.
Yeah,
I remembered it was there.
that's right. They used to have it. I used to have to inspect it. People smoked in there. Yeah. But that was the last one that I'm aware of in Reading, unless there's some other private clubs that have one without a permit.
In which case, we don't really worry about that.
I don't know about them. Right.
No way to do so. Yes. Yeah.
So this is pretty standard. I think most of our regulations around have this wording in it. Okay.
Okay,
So you want that.
let's go with that.
Now, I don't know why non-residential roll your own machines is in here, truthfully. I wish Cheryl was on the call. They're actually not allowed by federal law anymore. It used to be that you could have them, and maybe about 6-7 years ago, we started seeing them pop up in gas stations and these big, huge machines that cost a lot of money. And there were concerns about what might be put in the top. You buy a bag of tobacco, you put it in this big, huge machine, bigger than a commercial washing machine, and then you load your rolling papers or your cigarette tubes, and then the cigarettes get rolled, and it's cheaper because you buy those big bags of loose tobacco. But there was sanitary concerns, and concerns that somebody could dump a bag of weed in there, and then the next person comes in and dumps a bag of tobacco, so on. Well, anyway, while we were trying to figure out whether to ban them or not, kind of regionally and statewide, the federal law in a transportation bill several years ago, well, they didn't really ban them. What they did was they added a huge federal fee, like a $25,000 licensing fee and a renewal every year of $25,000. So that ended it.
Yeah.
People who had vending machines got rid of, or, roll your own machines, got rid of them. And I haven't seen one since. So anyway, I guess this is bulletproof if you have this wording in there.
Sounds good.
No harm in having it.
No harm in having it, right?
Yeah. This is standard, and it's also, you can see in yellow, it's in the state law with a little added language around it, that any healthcare institution or educational institution like a college bookstore can't have tobacco products for sale. So any.
In other words, CVS.
Right.
Right. Yep. And CVS voluntarily pulled out tobacco sales a long time ago, but Walgreens and other places didn't. However, Reading passed, we called it a pharmacy ban at the time, but several years ago, Reading passed, loosely termed a pharmacy ban. This is the stronger language that you may want to decide to adopt. It's not state language, it's the stronger language of MTCP TAs.
So this looks fine. P,
Okay.
section P looks fine to me, as does section Q around educational institutions. I can't believe we would be
Yep.
selling
Yep.
tobacco in educational institutions.
Great.
The bad old days.
Yes. I can remember smoking in my lecture halls.
Remember smoking in
Oh
my
my
office.
goodness.
And which does bring up a point that I think Cheryl emailed the day about is you also have the ETS regs, environmental tobacco smoke regs, but those can be handled separately if at some point you want to take a look at those ETS regs and decide if any of those need updating. But for right now, I think they're fine because Massachusetts has really strong smoke-free workplace laws. Anywhere people are working, you can't smoke. So, but you do have some exceptions in your regs. Some other time you might want to take a look at them. Hotel rooms, I forget the details, but maybe not for tonight.
Okay, so
Hi.
let's
We're
move
on,
to violations.
Yep.
So there are two options, and maybe before we get into the nitty gritty, you could just Wayne, you could just describe at a high level option 1 and option 2. So we might just based on that kind of go directly to one or the other.
okay, sure. So
Maureen,
yeah.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
Yes.
Cheryl?
You jumped on. Oh, good. So you can clear up any of our, confusion over this. Okay. So the state law requires a $1,000 fine for a first violation of any of the state law, state law, not your local regulations, but state law. $2,000 for a second regulation in a 36-month period, 3-year period, and $5,000 for a third violation in that 3-year period, any 3-year period. So it's a violation, we look back, is it first violation, second violation, or third violation? That determines the amount of the fine. Your local regs have a different fine structure, and that structure is $100 for a first violation, $200 for a second violation, and $300 for a third violation. Some communities have decided to have one fine structure. They just went with a state law structure, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 for every violation, whether it was local or state. Some kept them separate. We call that a dual structure. They said, gee, do we really want a cigar minimum price violation to be fined at the same level as sale to a minor? So sale to a minor is a state law, $1,000 fine. But blunt wrap which is a local reg, or a minimum cigar price violation is a local reg, do you want that to be $1,000 for the first violation, or do you want to keep it at $100? That's a basic difference.
If I can interject quickly, the board adopted the state law tonight. So did they adopt the fees as well, or?
They did, yeah, for state law violations, so that would be selling a flavored product, that would be for selling to a minor, but the state law doesn't include some of the, very few, but some of the blunt wrap ban is a local reg, it's not in the state law. And cigar minimum price is a local reg, it's not in the state law. So tonight you'll be deciding not on the state law violations, those are 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, but you'll be deciding on whether those local regs, minimum price, blunt wrap, whatever, are going to be fined at, when there's a violation, are they going to be fined at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, or are they going to be fined at 100, 200, 300?
And that's where the dual comes in.
Pardon?
The dual that you talked about, the dual fees.
Yes, yes, yep, yep, dual structure, yep.
But technically, with some of the way this reads, we need to fill this in tonight because we just adopted something in the terms of section 1, part B, where it's shall or may. Those are two very distinctive terms to an attorney.
Yes.
And we have nothing. Right now it reads product sales permit be suspended for. So we definitely want to fill in that ABC section with the green part
Yes.
tonight.
Yes,
And at
yes,
least adopt
absolutely,
that
that's
part. And at least adopt that part tonight because it's part of in the state.
because of the state, yes, you're exactly right, Kevin.
Okay.
But if we go with option 2, and we pick, the day suspension, that would go along with for a violation of a local reg, they could be suspended for however many days. There's only one set of days. Is that correct? If we go with option 2. Because in option 2, it's a unified structure. And what you're saying is the dollars and the days are the same regardless of the violation. Whereas in option 1, there are dollars and days for the state violations, but we could custom potentially smaller fines and fewer days. Am I reading that right?
Cheryl, you want to jump in?
Sure. I think you are reading that right. What the option 2 would be to, option 2 is to unify them. Option 1 is to have different fining structures for those the parts of the regulation that are the state law versus the ones that are just specific to Reading. And Maureen went through what those are. There aren't a lot of them, but there are some. So you could, and again, if you're looking at amending your regulation, you could change the local violations any way you want. You could, for instance, Reading does not have any suspensions for violating your local regulation. You just have penalties, fines. You don't have suspensions. You could add suspensions if you so chose. That would be up to you, and the suspensions could clearly be less than what's required in the state law.
Okay. So maybe the first question for the board then is, do we, before we get into the detail of either option 1 or option 2, is do we want to have 2 in option 1? There's the state violations, there's a standard, and then there's a set of penalties for local violations. So there's 2 separate types of approaches. In option 2, whatever, it doesn't matter what the violation is, whether it's selling to someone under 21 or some potentially much smaller violation, selling menthol cigarettes, it'd still be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and maybe some heavy duty day suspension. It seems like option 2 to me may be a blunt instrument as opposed to option 1, which, is a little bit more putting the punishment consistent with the violation. I don't know, that's my initial thoughts. What do other people think?
I'll go. I would agree with you on both of those points. I always liked having, the board should always like to have options on their own that they can choose to change, modify as they need to. I think option 1 is the better option for that regard, also because of the way the fine is levied. The real crux of this is selling to someone under 21 should come with a substantial fine, right? And the state law has laid that out nicely for us. And I think I agree with you, Rick, in saying that the rest of the local regulations are things that are just that, local, and should be controlled locally by the Board of Health. And to note, for all the public that's out there, I'm glad Maureen mentioned earlier that Reading has an excellent track record because we have excellent managers and owners that are doing a great job of not selling to minors, not selling things that are banned. So because we have such great buy-in to these regulations, I think option 1 is a better one as well too for the local portion of it.
Yes, Carrie, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? We're talking about the application for our local, our specific locals, which by my note that's the sale of single and multi-pack cigars, the prohibition on blunt wraps, and the humidors. Is that right? Are those the?
Right, I think so. Yeah.
So it's applicable only to those 3. It's not broadly applicable for all. So, and not to pick on you, Rick, but so the example of selling menthol cigarettes, that's not.
Actually, that's a state, yes.
That's a state law.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I just want to make sure.
You're
Okay.
right. That's
And
good.
also the local for not having a tobacco sales permit.
Okay.
Right.
That
Oh,
would
yeah,
also
all the
be a-
permit violations. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that, Carrie, because I was getting confused.
You were?
Just saying.
a lot of bouncing balls here. So, okay.
So I want to make sure though that I'm clear now. So option 1 says everybody would get the $1,000 fine or the $2,000 fine or the $3,000 fine. We'll talk, I mean, 5,000. We'll talk about suspensions in a second. Option 2 would be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 for the state level ones, selling to a minor, selling a flavor product, and then 100, 200, 300 for the local.
It's just the opposite. Option 1 is where there's the state and local distinction. And option 2 is the unified fining structure.
That's what it says it right there. Unified fine.
And as you said, there are no suspensions right now in Reading's regulation for local penalties.
Right. So then our questions become, what do we want? What do we consider the appropriate fine levels for sale of single or multi-packs for less than the 3 and 6? Sale of blunt wraps, provision of humidors, either self-serve humidors, locked or not, and then sale without a permit. So those are we want to figure out what are the fines for those. And then the next layer would be, do we want to add suspensions, or do we want to stay as we are with no suspensions? Did I get that right?
Yes.
That sounds right to me, yeah.
So Cassidy, can you scroll down to option 1? Oh, sorry, up, yes. because this is what we're talking about here is option one. I'm getting a sense that we want to go with this option so we can just focus on these changes and not even look at option two. Maybe, so with respect to these penalties, getting down to the detail that, as Kerry mentioned, you know, we're required to do the 1,000, 2,000, and 5,000, but we can elect to choose our own number of days suspension. And as Kevin said, shall or may in that cases. So maybe we ought to focus on, at least for the state violations, what we would want here.
So Cheryl, my understanding of this was for the state level violations, selling to a minor, flavor, whatever, it's there's a mandatory suspension for a first violation, 1 to 30 days decided by the Board of Health.
Correct.
And I thought there was a 7-day suspension for the second violation and a 30-day suspension for but that's a choice.
Actually, the way the state law reads, Maureen, most choose 7 and 30, but the regulation reads from 1 to 7 or more if the local authority wants more. So it can be 1 to 7 for the second, and it can be 7 to 30 for the third.
7 to 30. 1 to 7, 7 to 30. Okay.
But on the first, it can be up to 30 days.
Correct, for a sale to someone under 21.
Oh,
You nailed
just
it,
for that.
Paula.
Okay.
You
Just
nailed it,
for
Paula.
sale to
It's a
someone under
discrepancy.
Just for
21.
sale, right. You don't, yeah, no suspension for those other violations for
No.
first violation, just a sale
Just
to a
sale
minor
to someone
violation.
under 21.
Okay.
Maureen, can you remind me what do we fine people now for a violation?
If it's a sale to a minor or a
Or we
flavor,
adopted this state.
it's a state level, so they're getting $1,000 fine or 2,000 or 5,000, even
When did that
without you
go into effect?
changing. 1/1/20. Well,
Okay.
1/1/20 for sale to a minor and 6/1/20 for flavor violation.
Okay.
So
Because
that was,
we're enforcing state law because it trumps local reg. If your local reg was stricter, we'd use the local reg, but because it's not, we're using the state law for enforcing.
so, and we've already done that because we did have one instance that someone came before us and there had been a sale.
Right.
to a minor.
Right.
We did enforce state law then.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I will say well, I can say all of the other communities that I've worked with have 7-day suspension for the second violation and 30-day suspension for the third violation. But for that first violation, if it was a sale to a minor, it's I have some 3 days and some 5 days. They want to be less than 7 because 7's what you get for a second violation. But they know they have to do something because the law says between 1 and 30 days.
And we can also increase the fees for the local, right? Instead of 100, 200, 300, we can go to 500, 1,000, and 1,500.
Whatever you want.
Right. So let's stick with 1, A, B, and C. And I think, 3, 7, and 30 sounds fine to me, but do other people have other numbers in mind?
No, that sounds reasonable to me.
Kevin?
That sounds reasonable. I just have a quick question. Do we define in this regulation what a business day is? Because a business day to me is Monday through Friday, right?
No, not for retail stores.
It's 7 days a week, or when they're open, I should say.
Yeah, when they're open. And
Do we
you
have that
would
defined in here? Or is it defined in the state law somewhere?
Well, it's just business days means when you're open. I don't think we need a definition more than business days. When you're open for business is a business day.
That's generally not the perception, and I don't know if it's a perception issue or a different issue,
Well, I
but
mean,
business day is
when
always
you-
Monday through Friday.
Well, that's for legal notice. It's Monday through Friday, but I don't think it's for anything else anymore. That's,
Okay, I just don't want to get tripped up.
no, I
on-
understand what you're saying, but I think for most stores, business days are when they're open for business. And you're going to be determining that at a public hearing
was gonna
before
say-
you suspend anything.
Not to be a pain, but can we add that definition in? What we consider a business day in here?
Sure.
Just to leave no doubt, simplify it. Never let a future board try to determine what we were thinking tonight here in this spot.
Sure.
Kind of mentality. Okay, thank
I
you.
can put it in the definition section.
Perfect.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on the 3730? Go, Paula, you're fine. Kevin, you're fine with
fine,
it.
yeah.
Jerry,
Good.
you're okay with that? Jerry? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then I'm presuming we're thinking shall and not may. Because if
Yes.
it's may, then
Agree.
we need to, you
Subject
know,
to
there's
discussion.
appeals, there's ambiguity, there's,
Just make it clear.
yeah.
Shall.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
envision something in the future that a board would want to change because of
Right.
some specific thing that may have thought not happen. I mean, these things are cut and dry,
Yeah.
right? They
Right.
violated or they didn't. It's pretty simple. I think shall is the right term.
And then in terms of section 2, in terms of the dollar penalty, it's currently 100, 200, and 300. It does sound pretty low by current standards of what we
Can I
find.
interrupt you real quick, Rick? Sorry. Just to clarify, as well as we're dropping the or more part of B and C.
Yeah.
We're just,
Yes.
Yeah.
correct.
okay.
Ade, do you have any thoughts about how this fine structure fits in relative to other types of fines that the health department levies?
Well, I planned to pretty much go through a fee review with the board in the summer, because the fees that we currently have, they're like really low. So for example, we have keeping of animals permit fee, it's $10, and it costs way more than that to get an inspection done. So I was gonna bring you know, the fees up in the summertime, you know, one step at a time, but just looking at what we have right now, it looks low to me.
What about 500 for a first offense? And 750 and 1,000? Just throwing numbers out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask also Maureen, you know, what you're seeing in other towns, general range.
Yeah, so far, no one has changed the number. They either decided one fee structure, so 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 for both state and local, or two fee structures, the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and the old 100, 200, 300.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the rationale behind that is that if you use the 100, 200, 300, you can enforce through what's called non-criminal disposition, which means you can issue civil tickets for the fines. If you go over, you can only use non-criminal disposition if the fine is $300 or less. So that's the reason that folks have used the 100, 200, 300. If you increase those, but not up to the state level, you can still enforce, but you would be enforcing using a cease and desist order, as we do now for the state fines. So that's the difference. That's why there are two different structures.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, I think somewhere in the range of what Paula had suggested, you know, seems more reasonable than this.
You want to just go 200, 250, 300?
Say that again, Kevin.
Just
One?
to make it, again, something that's a ticketable offense for us, just go 200, 250, 300.
Oh, I see.
So you're increasing the first two hits, but you're also just allowing to make it a simpler process to find them.
How about we think about the gravity of these violations? I mean, if you're operating without a permit, that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. That's
even though
egregious.
yeah, it is
Yep.
egregious.
But isn't having a permit a state?
No, that's Board of Health. That's local.
That's
Our
local.
local requirement, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems,
So if somebody had, you know, some tobacco on their counter just because they thought, why not?
hmm,
I'll get $100 ticket. That's fine.
Right, because
yeah.
how much am I making by being able to sell these things, you know?
Yeah.
And you're opening up a pathway to those younger folks that we are trying to, because if they don't have a permit, then they don't have to worry about the cost. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay,
So if
yeah, I would
question?
be in favor of something stronger, you know, whether it's 250, 500, 750, or something like that. And I'm not sure. Yeah, we should decide on some number.
Can I ask just a quick question, regardless of the number? What's our procedure, Maureen, right now, if there is, let's say there was a violation in that regard, if someone's selling their own tobacco products?
So if
in
it's a
store,
violation,
can we shut them down for that? As well as fine them?
so you mean if they're selling without a permit
Yeah, excuse me.
or
selling
one of
without-
these other violations?
Yeah, if a store is open, but it doesn't have their permit in place, can we shut them down or can we only just fine them?
I'd let a day answer that. I think probably
Take and desist.
you'd invite them to come before the board and decide if you wanted to revoke their license to do business. It's not a fine that that's not a decision that I would make
It would be a cease and desist first.
first, right, the first step. But in terms of shutting them down, it wouldn't be.
Okay.
Well, and I think that we're talking about, I mean, we're talking about kind of generally anybody, right? Not just somebody who might be the people that would sell tobacco that we want them to get a permit, sort of the usual people that might sell, businesses that might sell, but we're talking about anybody. So then our ability to shut them down, I don't know how that works. So, right.
Well,
let's
you
go-
could-
Sorry.
You can I mean, I would do exactly what Aid said, you know, you issue a cease and desist order, you have them in for hearing, or if it's an emergency, you can, emergency laws apply, and you can always have them do it. But a permit is a privilege, it's not a right. You have to give them due process, so you would want to have them in for hearing.
Yep.
Unless you thought it was an emergency. And you could also use just the nuisance statute. Could cause danger to the well-being of the residents of Reading.
Right.
Cassidy, could you scroll up one page? No, the other way. I'm sorry, scroll down. I get those mixed up. Okay, so right there. So the column on the right is what are the violations that we're talking about with respect to the local fines? Just so people.
Well, no, actually, this is the green, and what Aid asked me to do was to put in green all the possible policies that Reading could entertain. The ones that Reading currently has do not include all of these. They are cigar sales regulated, no local tobacco sales permit, retailer density minimums for, I believe it's around schools, and the transfer of a permit in the sale of a business. That's what you currently have as local regulations. You don't have all of these. The green are the policies that are available in the template.
So
Right.
to that end, then we could, we'd probably want to remove a couple of these things like, where was the one where signing somebody 250.
Well,
Sign in
unfortunately,
the window is,
Kevin, that is a state law.
oh, so
And
they get
not
fined 1,000?
only the sign, no, it's actually for fining for the no signs, it's actually $1,050. They
Wow.
added we testified against it, but that was what the regulation
Let's
ended
make
up
sure
being.
all our businesses know about that one. Wow.
Well, they have to have all of those signs, and if they
Yeah.
don't, it's
No, I get it. That's just a very.
it's what the
steep
Public
fine.
Health Council voted.
Okay.
So the column on the left has all the CMR
Yes.
annotations,
Yes,
and there is signage listed.
yes.
But let's go back to pick some numbers for the local fines. Other thoughts? I think
Can I just add something? I think the local violations are equally as egregious as the state violations, and I think we should have a unified fee. I think we should go with option 2.
So you're saying, because thank you, I'm trying to figure out what the compelling case is for not going unified, and I haven't heard it yet. So thank you for framing it that way. What am I missing?
The case that we had discussed, but may not be, you may want to revisit this. What we had said earlier was basically to have the punishment meet the crime, so to speak. So the question was whether the types of local regulations were as serious and that we wanted to impose the $1, $2, and $5,000 fine and those similar suspensions, or whether we wanted to have 2 separate. So that was the rationale.
Right.
Why we sort of ended up in option 1, but we can definitely revisit it.
So then that brings me back to this question of which are the ones, so because it's humidors, blunt wraps, no tobacco permit, the sale of the singles, and then there's something about selling near stores and oh, sorry, schools, not stores.
Schools. Right. Cassidy, can you scroll back to those 2 columns?
And selling without a permit is under local jurisdiction as well.
No local.
Right. Yeah, that was the first one I said, because that one I'm right there with. That's egregious, absolutely.
Yeah,
But
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the items on the right-hand side of this large green block of text, and those are our local, but they're not. Those are our
Well, some of them we've already agreed to, like the tobacco product sales in healthcare institutions and educational institutions. We agreed to that. We agreed to banning roll your own machines. We obviously have a permit thing. We talked last time about retailer densities and we adjusted that. So we have a lot of these on the right column.
But we don't have them as a local reg. We're just doing the state.
No,
We
these are the ones we opted to do locally. If we look
Great.
back at the document, they're the green. These are the ones we've talked about in green.
Sorry, everything's green. That's why I'm
Yeah, that's confusing. On
Can I-
the- This
can I get
column
a-
on the left is all the state. It should be yellow.
So I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can we move stuff from the column on the right to the column on the left? In other words, can we pick and choose on the column on the right what we want to adopt locally? And then slide everything else over to the left that we feel should be larger finable offenses?
You can do whatever you want. That's going to change the way the regulation is drafted because we're going to have another section in the violation section that specifies for each policy what the findings could be. You can certainly do it.
Right, because right now, Cheryl, the way we have this set up is everything on the right are either in there or possibly we've voted as like you can't have selling in educational institutions, for example. We've said that we're not going to allow that, but now we have to place it, where do we violate? What violation is that, right? So that's what we're kind of in the middle of. We have to determine what does that mean? Because as of right now, we've just banned it. We haven't said we're in violation until we adopt something, all this stuff that's in here on that right column. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so to me that I would, tobacco product sales to healthcare institutions should be over on the left. Educational should be over on the left. Roll your own machines, left. Display of Mass Department of Revenue licenses. Is that, I thought you said that already is a state. So would this be additional?
Hold on.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't believe there's a requirement that they be displayed. There's a requirement that they have them,
Okay,
but there's not a requirement that they be displayed.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
So if you had, I mean, I know what you were saying earlier, Kerry, but I think if we could, lack of a better term, cherry pick this, I prefer option one for that regard. If there's something, if we could slide the things that we feel are really egregious over into the state finding structure, and then keep the rest
You
of it
can.
that we feel is more day in, day out stuff at the local level, I'd prefer option one for that reason, because I think option one really takes, to me, hits home with the biggest problematic areas, especially if we could slide some of these over. But, selling to under 21 obviously is one of the biggest ones on there. So that's just my rationale for thinking why I think option one is better. And it also gives the flexibility to the board to, if they adopt other new local regulations, to decide where they want to place it. That's all.
And
Yes,
I understand that. What I'm trying to understand is what are the ones that are going to be local then? So that then
Right.
that's what's not clear.
No, it's not clear at all.
Because yes, that's what I'm just trying to figure out what we're making local. That then we have to think what we think about it for option one.
So we don't have to have local regs if we don't want them. That's an option. Correct, Cheryl?
Right.
No, you can
No?
just adopt the state law, but if you want to add some of the policies that I understand, and I wasn't here for the beginning, I was on another Zoom. If you want to add some of these other suggested local policies, then you need a local regulation.
Right, so it's not a matter of, so these things on the right-hand side are, if we don't make them a local policy, it's not, is it not a, it's a we have to decide if all of those things on the right-hand side, do we want to make them a local policy? They are not covered in the state side.
Correct.
So it's not a matter of sliding, I don't think, Kevin.
No, it's a matter of making a new category, like a subcategory, which would mirror the state finding. So these particular things will also be fined at the level of 1,000. What is it? 1,000, whatever that state level is in the state. And the same thing with the days and term. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So if you take all that state stuff and you then just have a you'd have to create a new subsection and then put these things into that.
Okay.
It muddies it a little bit, but it it separates it. Now it's option 3, where now you have A, B, and C fining structure, essentially.
So
And
again, I guess.
A
the
would be the
question-
state level, B would be
Got
the
it.
next down local level that's more penal, and then C would be the, 100, 200, 300 level.
So I guess my question still stands of what are. the
Cheryl and
things
Maureen
that-
are hating me right now as I'm saying this.
So my question
I
still
can't hate
stands.
you. My daughter and her family live in Reading, so I can't.
So does my son.
There you go. So we can.
And Kevin, I saw your mother tonight.
Oh, you bet. Unfortunately, I know where.
Okay, so then my question still stands. What are the items on the right-hand side that anyone is suggesting ought to be fined at less than a state level fine?
And does the board feel comfortable with figuring that out tonight? Not to prolong.
Well,
this,
I don't
but-
even want to go there. I just want to know first, what are they?
Mm.
And then we figure out, one step at a time.
Well, you just, you got to look through them each by each and say,
Right, but I
would
just
we
want to know
want
what they are. Because if there are 3 or 4, sorry, I'm jumping in on you, but I mean, if
No,
there are
no.
3 or 4 and we're all agree on them, then we don't have to push it back. But if there are 8 and we don't agree and we're not sure, then yeah, I mean, we would have to probably continue the conversation. So, so that's my question is kind of what are the questions that get, what are the local options? What are the local options that we want to pick up? And what are the ones that we want at a lower fine rate than the state rate?
So let me say that, first of all, we are on the violation section of this document. We have already decided on those items in the column on the right that we've agreed to do. So we've kind of already decided the ones we're going to have. And in fact, to my looking at this, I think we decided on all of them. So we do have all of them that we've agreed to adopt as a local option. And so the question is, I'm a little concerned about just in terms of time frame and to be able to do this, because this is going to a level of detail that I think would trying to get consensus on 10 different items might take us a long time. So I would suggest one of 2 things. One is we could individually, we could set up a process offline and have each board member submit to a day the recommendations, either 100, 200, 300 for these, and 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 for these. And maybe at our next meeting, we could see the results of that and have a discussion. The other possibility is we could simply stay with the 100, 200, 300 for now. And then in the summer, when a day comes back to us with an overview of all the fines for all sorts of things, we might have a better perspective of, proportionality, in terms of our overall fine structure, and then we might want to address it. I just think trying to go through 10 items and getting consensus could,
Oh, agree. I don't want to know what, so all of those things are things that we need to determine what our local fine would be for
right.
every one of the items on the right-hand side.
So,
And not to make it even worse, but Cassidy, could you just go ahead and scroll up just a little bit, because there is actually a chunk above that. Oh no, okay, I'm sorry. On my regs, it's on 2 different pages. On yours, it's on 1. Sorry.
yeah.
So I think we should go with option 1 to have the board members try to figure out what category these items fall into. And I think we should just have 2 categories. Is either egregious or not egregious. And we know that if it's egregious, then it falls into the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 fine structure. And if it's not egregious, then it falls into the 100, 200, 300.
So why don't we do a sort of offline in between meetings survey, and we can present the results at the next meeting for discussion and deliberation. And we may find that there's certain ones that everybody agrees should be high fines, everybody agrees low fines, and then we can discuss the one or two or three that, because I think that might be just more efficient.
Yeah, there's probably only 2 or 3 on there that you want to have as a less egregious.
So I think we need to, let me see where we are at this point. I think we've agreed, if Cassidy, if we go up to the previous page, yep. So what my understanding of what we've agreed to is, for the state, it's 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, it's 3 days, 7 days, 30 days, it's shall in each case. And we're going to put in a definition for what business days are. And then for the section 2, we're going to, we'll do this process and decide which of the local regs should be high penalties versus low. And we'll do that at the next meeting.
Just
Can I
one
ask a real
omission
quick
for
question?
section 1 is to remove or more. Anything that says or more
Yes.
needs to be eliminated.
Yes.
Yep.
Can I just ask a quick question, Maureen? Forgive me, I know I've asked this like 3 different ways tonight. This is a state regulation. We're just adopting it, but you're complying with it right now, correct?
That's right. Anything that's in the state law, we are enforcing it at the state law fine level.
And,
Yep.
and is there a day structure and
And by the way, and Kevin, for right now also, and if there was a local regulation violation, we would enforce it at the local level fine structure of 100, 200.
Sure.
Because you have that, it's in place and we can operate, we'll continue to operate.
I'm just curious do you need us to, the board to vote on section 1 on the violations as they've just
No.
discussed and changed tonight? Or
Nope.
you're good, you can wait until this whole thing gets voted on?
It can wait, yep, it can wait. We've been doing this since
Okay.
1/1/20, yep.
Got it.
It's just
Good.
nice
Wanted
to,
make sure.
yeah, it's nice to clean it up and have it match, but we're enforcing state law right now. And then local regs will continue to be enforced with your local
Great.
fine structure.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then if we can just scroll, we don't have to look at option 2 because we've already decided. So we can kind of scroll up, keep going to here, T. So this is the last local discretionary items. And can Maureen, if you want to kind of review this and
I'll have, because we have Cheryl here, I'm gonna have Cheryl jump in on
Okay.
this.
Sure, I'm happy to. T
Thank you.
is just, if you keep your fines under $300, then this section is relevant. If you raise them up beyond 300, then you can just take that out because this just gives you the ability. Each day a violation exists is a separate offense. And then enforcement is by the Board of Health or whoever the Board of Health designates to do the enforcement. And the reason that we put in that these can be enforced through any lawful process is that we sometimes run into situations where if we're enforcing with non-crim and someone doesn't comply with it and you want to file an application for a criminal complaint, you just want to make sure that all options are open to you. Severability is my favorite clause in the world because that means if any section of this regulation is found to be illegal, the other sections are fine. And that's it. And then you choose an effective date.
Okay, so I think,
I would like to make a couple of comments, Kevin, to your point about, what can you do or what can't you do with, until the board votes. The only thing that, and it's not a problem, but the thing that the board will have to do every time there's a first violation sale to a minor is they will have to meet and decide the number of days, because the state law does say you have to have a suspension 1 to 30 days. And so if there's a violation, I'm going to let a day know, he's going to let you know, and then you're going to have to meet and decide 1 to 28, whatever number of days. Once you finish this process of updating your regulations, you'll have that set number of days in there, and you won't have to meet to decide that number of days. You will have decided 3 days, and in every case of a first sale to a minor, it'll be 3 days.
right,
So that,
But
but it's not a big deal. We're doing
It
that
isn't.
now.
Maureen, couldn't they vote tonight just to adopt 3 days until such time as the regulation is final?
Yeah, absolutely. You can carve that out and take that as
So
a
if you
separate
want to
item and
just vote that, so you don't have to come in before these are decided, you can just vote right now that you've determined that 3 days is the appropriate suspension for selling to someone under the age of 21 at a first offense, if you want to.
He said 3, 7, and 30 with the
No,
consecutive.
we're just talking about that one piece where you need to determine how many days to suspend for a first offense of selling to someone under 21. Not the whole regulation, but just you can choose, because that's what some municipalities aren't updating their regulation, and they're just doing that piece by a vote. So you could do that piece by a vote.
given our experience in Reading, I think I've been on the board 3 years, and I think we had one instance.
Yep.
I would sort of opt to just, let's try to do this all at once, maybe the next. Of course,
Okay.
of course, it'll prove me wrong. Within the next 30 days, we'll have a case. But otherwise,
Yeah, either is fine.
It's also,
And-
no, you don't have a vote on the agenda. So I would shy away from that as well.
Oh, okay. So we would adopt these because we've decided to go with option 1, and therefore items T, U, V, and W are relevant, and these will be included. So for our next meeting in March, I'm thinking that we will have a discussion around which local regs require higher and lower fines. And otherwise, we really should hopefully have a document, or tell me if I'm wrong, hopefully we should have a document that doesn't have any yellow or green, but simply is what we agreed. The blues and the yellows and the greens all go away. And it's summarized by our discussion tonight.
Yep.
Does that
Sounds good.
sounds okay?
I
Hey,
agree.
do you think we would have that?
I think that we would have that, but the part that has to deal with the violations will still
Yes.
be in green.
That's correct. Right. And we'll make.
I could make them purple.
All good.
Okay. I think we're done on this topic.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Maureen.
Maureen,
Thanks, Cheryl.
for taking.
Thank
the-
you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you all.
Yeah.
See you next month.
Yes.
Good night.
Good
Stay
night.
warm.
Okay, next on the agenda, Carrie, did you have any updates on the coalition? I think you were going to the meeting.
I don't actually, because the coalition meeting was canceled due to weather and staff
okay.
availability. And I also don't, I only have a update. I mean, for PEAR, it would be that there was a very successful MLK event, which I was unable to attend because I was sick, and I missed the January meeting because I was sick. So, but they're working on allyship workshops, and it promises to be an exciting couple of months. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, Kevin, I was going to pinch hit for you, but the weather said no.
I know that the last 3 have been strikeouts, and I'm supposed to see that nice new room up at the police station, the community meeting room. That's where they're
Is
supposed to
it
be.
done?
Yeah,
It's
that's where the
done.
last 3 are supposed to be, but
I
maybe
need to
next
go.
month.
I need to go see it. Okay.
So a day, monthly update.
All right, so yes, monthly update, 365 Ash Street. No update at this point. The occupant is still in rehab with no plans for discharge at this time. Shared services grant, we received 2 installmental payments totaling $150,000. We're in the process of hiring a shared services coordinator that will manage the grant and help with hiring for positions covered under the grant. We are budgeted to hire a public health nurse, public health inspector, and an epidemiologist.
Yeah, nice.
Yes. We have the health department, in conjunction with the coalition, will be hosting a free Narcan administration training at the Reading Public Library on February 21st, 2023 from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. In terms of inspections conducted this month, in January, we conducted 19 food establishment inspections, 3 food re-inspections, 3 food complaints, 1 closure due to a fire. So at Pamplemousse, they were closed for 4 days because they had a fire in their kitchen due to a malfunctioning dishwasher. But everything has been remediated, and they're open for business. We had 3 housing complaints in January. 1 on Washington Street. It was for an abandoned house. There was another one on Main Street for trash, and 1 on Pleasant Street for trash in the yard. And then we had a trash complaint at 565 Main Street, but it wasn't really about a sanitary condition. It was more of an oversized dumpster being placed on the property. That's pretty much it for tonight. I will now defer to our public health nurse, Mallory, to provide updates on disease surveillance, reporting, and control. Hi, Mallory.
Hi, everyone. Okay. So we have 25 active cases of COVID, 5 cases between ages 18 and younger, 20 for older than 18. We have had 97 cases of influenza since the beginning of September. And our next vaccine clinic is tomorrow through Vaccinate RX at the Coolidge School.
Thanks,
And-
Mallory.
All right.
So I had a couple comments. One is that just in terms of nursing, I had an email from a resident who was concerned about the reduction in the part-time FTE of the public health nurse in the budget. And, in talking with the day and Fidel, I think there's a good feeling that Mallory is doing a great job and, doing everything we need. And that this public health nurse that would be hired as part of the shared services grant provides an additional resource if we need it, and that there are plenty of our funds available should we need additional public health nursing. But I think we feel like we're well situated in terms of that staffing. I wanted to comment that I got emails from the health department around various events and so forth. And I think that's great. And we've been seeing more stuff on social media and on the website. So that's highlighting the good work that Mallory and Ade are doing. So that's been good to see. Fidel did tell me that the petition to the state legislature has gone to the state legislature and is now grinding through the process on Beacon Hill in terms of the 5-member board. And we're sort of at the whim of their schedules and so forth. And I guess our local representatives would, make the case for us around that petition. Couple other things. One is just to remind folks that the emergency exceptions for the open meeting law expire March 31st. We don't know what the state is going to do, whether to extend it. There's a potential that we may go to hybrid meetings or starting in April or not. And we'll just have to see, but just kind of keep that sort of be aware of that. Also, in terms of meetings, our next meeting is March 2nd. But in April, I have a commitment that on April 6th. And so I'm wondering if we can move the April 6th meeting to April 13th, if that works for people or not. And if it doesn't, we could pick another date.
It's fine by me.
Anybody have a conflict that you're aware of? Okay, that's great. So we'll do that on the 13th. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, suggestions? I think we had, I'm surprised we really got through the tobacco document. I thought we would be
Almost.
not almost. We're almost there. But that's good. Yes, Carrie, you're on mute.
I know, because my son was all excited about the Pro Bowl or something. So. Okay. I have two small questions for our next meeting. Or maybe, well, and first is I'm curious about how the emergency preparedness work is being parceled out in the department now with restructuring and the like. And related to that, I would love to see that included in the monthly update. And did we decide to dispense with a written report of kind of what activity is, or are we just going back to voice? Because I have a preference that we have a written monthly update of activity in the department. So those are my, I guess, questions, comments.
I would say that, Ade and I haven't really talked about this, but I think Ade was suitably impressed when he saw the document when he arrived here in Reading. And I think the issue was really kind of all the turnover and staffing and so forth. And I'd be interested in your comments, Ade, but I would agree. I would like to get back to the written document, particularly now that I think the department's fully staffed, and it's helpful to see it. And I'm not sure about the emergency preparedness, who attends those meetings now or what. So Ade, do you want to comment?
I can give you a full comment at the next meeting.
Yes.
If that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. Just wanted to. Yes.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
for
Thank you.
everything all of you are doing. I know you're working hard, and I know there's an awful lot on everyone's plates.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Cassidy has been a great addition. She's been very
Yes.
good with social media and putting things on the website. So we are
Thanks so
we're
much.
thrilled to have her.
Yeah, no, not intended as, if anyone heard it as criticism, that was not the intent. It's curiosity and interest for our, for future. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, motion to adjourn. We have a second.
Sure.
Paula, second. Roll call, Carrie,
Yes.
Paula,
Yes.
Rick, yes.
Thank you all and have a
Bye.
great night.
Good job
Have a
tonight.
good
Night.
Thank
Stay
weekend.
warm,
Thank you.
everybody. Stay safe. Be well.
Thanks, Jackie.
Jackie.
Bye.